All right, I'm gonna start the public forum at this time. 3 minutes, 3 minutes only. Anyone like to speak? Come on up to the podium.
Get things rolling. Hello, Sarah Parmalee, representing the Piedmont Environmental Council. Thank you for recording this meeting and allowing for public comment. We do think the minimum revenue agreement is a good idea and is glad the town is pursuing this. We think that the clauses to escalate the payment based on the relevant market index and to ensure the minimum payment is met even with the tax reimbursement associated with the Culpeper tax zone are also very good measures to include in this. The tech sphere is rapidly evolving and doubtless will look different in 15 years, but we doubt that this campus will be abandoned at that time. For that reason, we are encouraging the council to ask that the agreement be renegotiated in 15 years rather than simply abandoned. This agreement is going to have a significant, and this development is going to have a significant impact on the community, which is why we're also asking for further justification for the $1.5 million per building figure. Being transparent about how this figure is reached is not only important for maintaining public confidence, but also so that other localities potentially looking to negotiate similar agreements, can use this as a baseline when conducting their own negotiations. And as was mentioned in a previous meeting this morning, this is not your money, this is the public's money, and we encourage you to get all that you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
That never happens. Ladies first. Hi, Brenda Grouden. I live over in Oak Lawn. I just laid my husband to rest in that cemetery, and so I'm really interested in what you all have planned for next door to it. Regarding the renegotiating the taxes, I think it's probably a good idea to shorten that time period, maybe to half, maybe to 7 years, because the technology field is rapidly advancing. Everything is getting smaller. I can't see that they're going to be needing buildings that large for the next 20 years. I was around when computers first came out. They used to fill a room twice the size of this when they first came out. Now I can put one in my pocket. Servers are doing the same thing. I've been inside of the one of those buildings, and it is absolutely humongous. It makes Costco look like it's this big. There's also a humming noise outside of the two that I've visited. Someone on the council told me they had visited one. They couldn't hear anything outside. I'm 75. I could hear it from a football field away. I can't address the decision to put that there, but I'm highly insulted that that would be made to look like you could have that or you could have 1,000 houses over there. I don't think you only had two choices. I just think it's maybe people don't see it the way I do, because I've gone over there and stood. I like the quiet. Any cemetery likes peace and quiet. Housing development might make more noise, but I would have rather seen that than these humongous buildings. I just think it's a bad decision. Anyway, like I said, I think I would shorten that period if you're going to renegotiate. And for Pete's sake, when you renegotiate, put the town first. And it's not all about the money. Sometimes it's not about the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, everyone. Brent Amos. I live at 801 Southeast Street. I wasn't aware there was going to be public comment today because the original agenda didn't have it, so I don't have any prepared remarks. I did send a letter to council, so I'm going to ask that some of these questions be answered on the record, just for transparency of the constituents that you represent. The scope of the coverage, the Guaranteed minimum is unclear on if it is for personal property taxes only, or if it also includes the real property. So clarifying that, because those numbers when combined can be quite substantial. There's some exclusions in there for non-data center structures. Are those, I'm assuming those are not covered by this deal because they do not include tax exempt operations, and so just want to confirm that. The basis of the calculation, it would be good to understand how the council or the people negotiating this agreement came to that number. Let's see. Fiscal impact disclosure. My understanding is the only fiscal impact study that was completed was done as part of the CTC redevelopment proposal. So just understanding, does this align with what your expectations were? There haven't been any public information around what the town's expectations were in regards to this. Escalation and inflation adjustments. I must admit I read it pretty quickly. I believe there may have been some language in there about escalation, but just making sure that that is covered in the overall agreement. Why does the agreement expire after 15 years without any limits to the negotiations? I think it's important, as Ms. Parmley pointed out, to make sure that at the end of that there's no more money, that we as the town still receive that. The lady who spoke just before me, couldn't agree more. I understand that this is not a question of the data center's development. It is a poor land use. It is unfortunate for those people who served our country and are buried there, but with the information and with it approved, I think we just need to make sure that we're protecting our citizens and ensuring the maximum tax revenues are provided to the town, given that once that's developed, it will not be able to be developed again. And then also something else to think about is when the buildings become obsolete, as was pointed out, are they going to sit there like all the Rust Belt factories and just be there in perpetuity as an eyesore, undevelopable for all of eternity, and then you lose all that tax revenue in the future? So be thinking about how those get decommissioned and how that land can be reused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Geesting, and I live at 202 Gardner Street. Like it or not, data centers that have been approved will be developed. What's important now and for the future is to ensure the town doesn't lose future revenue from tangible personal property tax and real estate property tax. The minimum revenue agreement attempts to mitigate loss of tangible personal property tax. We need to consider if the terms of the agreement are adequate and realistic now and moving forward into the future. Make sure we don't get shortchanged. The town needs to go big against the data centers, property owners, and any future tenants. The agreement needs to address what happens after the 15-year term, or, as someone has suggested, possibly a lower term that's subject to renegotiation. Also of concern to me, are there possible loopholes for the data centers to avoid payment of real estate property tax? And that I don't believe is addressed with this agreement at all, and probably is another matter, but I think we need to ensure that maybe in the future they don't become mega churches and become exempt for that reason. I believe there's a need for more public education. I would encourage citizens to sign up for the town e-notifications so that they can be notified in advance and have time to review the documents. It seems like social media has been the wave of how things have been transmitted, and there is such opportunity for misinformation and people from not even living in Culpeper weighing in, trying to sway whatever happens here in town. So I think we need a better public education procedure for the town overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Do I have to tell you my name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Deborah Craggs. I live at 113 East Asher.
1.5 million over 15 years. 1.5 million, based on inflation, is going to not be that much money. So I think you need an inflation clause. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Jessica Amos, 801 Southeast Street. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on the record. However, this should have been pushed to a later regularly scheduled meeting in an evening time slot, especially in light of all the public interest. I've heard from several people who wanted to be here this morning, but were not able to alter their schedule since the meeting was scheduled so last minute and initially with no opportunity to speak. I'm sure that most of you feel that this topic is mundane, essentially just lingering paperwork for this major development. I'm sure many of you are confused by citizens' interest. I'm sure many of you feel that we really don't know the background and that we need to let you do your jobs. That's the problem. People are angry and have lots of questions, which says that this entire process over the Copper Ridge and CTC data centers was critically lacking forthright discussion with the public. Since these approvals, you've had Culpeper residents who are experienced or even experts in these types of developments saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to look closer at all this. And the same remains true with this topic at hand today. These data centers should have never been approved in these locations, so I hope you understand why many of us can't help but question any and all the decisions being made by this body. While I'm glad to see a minimum revenue agreement being put in place, the $1.5 million per building is a major undervaluation. Keep in mind the cost of constructing these buildings is several billions. Many of you have told me that the data centers were approved for two reasons, jobs and tax revenue. As time has gone on, I hope you have come to understand that job creation at data centers is minimal, especially for the amount of land that is consumed by these developments. And the tax revenue has always been an unstable promise mired by many what-ifs. This is now made worse by the $1.5 million proposed in the minimum revenue amount. What was all of this for? A few measly million each year? For all that you've given up with these data center developments, quality of life, potential future development, sanctity of our national cemetery, Culpeper's character and history, you must make sure we're adequately paid, especially in the event of a tax-exempt tenant, which is a very real possibility. The developers need us more than we need them. Please do what's right for your constituents. And go to bat for us, not the developers. And please answer on the record today the questions that have been posed by my fellow citizens. We are simply seeking logic, truth, and answers. Thank you.
Anyone else? Close the public forum at this time. All right. Number 3, approval of electric rates, service, and minimum revenue agreement. Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. I have a presentation to walk you through this morning. First, to provide some background, you can see here on the map, this is a map that shows the electric service territory within the town. The area there bounded in red is Copper Ridge and Culpeper Technology Campus. Culpeper Technology Campus extends outside of the town for a little bit, so you can see the area there outside of town that's in white. So in this area, the town has the majority of the service territory in the town, and Dominion also has a portion of the service territory inside of town. In the county, REC has that territory in the county. So we're talking about the portion that's inside the town is what we're associated with. The area that falls in the town, which both of those falls a portion in the town is required to provide power to those customers. It's not an option as to whether we provide power, it's a requirement. Same as we are required to provide power to any customer within the service territory of the town. That being said, the town can contract with another utility to serve within our territory. So in the history, back in October 10th of 2023, council authorized the town manager to negotiate electric service agreements and/or release the town's right to serve prospective electric utility customers with a power load of at least 5 megawatts to Dominion Energy and/or Rappahannock Electric Cooperative within the McDivitt Drive Technology Zone. So that's the authority that you provided me at that time. At that time, the discussion with council was that the amount of power that these data centers use compared to the amount of power that our electric utility provides, it just kind of morphs that power. And even though there could be some potential revenue for the town providing this power directly, the liabilities associated with us providing that was more than the town wanted to embark upon. Essentially, it would make it such that it was almost like we had one customer, and that could have significant impacts if things went awry with the town. Electric service premise agreement was contracted with Dominion Energy to serve the area within the town service territory. So this electric service premise agreement is the mechanism to do what council authorized the manager to do. Dominion did provide they prepared and provided the first draft of the electric service premise agreement to the town in February of 2025. Negotiations continued. The owner is also a party to this agreement. There was significant negotiation that went on between then and August of 2025. And at that point, the agreement was nearing completion, and the intent was for the agreement to be signed in that time frame. But during that same time period, we had continued to do staff research and some things that we found, and things that I think are worth pointing out. The owner of Culpeper Technology Campus and Copper Ridge, it's the same developer, and they have a tendency to contract with hyperscale users. That can actually be a good thing versus a bad thing, but that is what they do. Hyperscale users typically have multiple campuses. Hyperscale users may have tax-exempt divisions, example, government divisions. And now at the time when I was learning some of this, I thought that meant that that if they have a government division, all that is tax exempt. I found since then that the majority are actually not tax exempt because the equipment is actually owned by the hyperscalers. What makes it tax exempt is if the equipment is owned by the government entity. It does happen, but it's less of a concern than I had initially when I found this out. Also, there's non-hyperscale users out there that are tax exempt. A good example of this occurred in Manassas, where a data center came in that was banking. Banking is exempt from the personal property tax, so therefore Manassas didn't get the revenue that they were anticipating that they were getting. Also, in looking at research, the Culpeper County tangible personal property tax rate is significantly higher than other counties that are being considered by hyperscale users. And again, these hyperscale users are oftentimes looking at multiple campuses. And so to me, it raises the questions. All things being equal, other than tangible personal property tax, where would one of these users have a tendency to locate tax exempt entities. And to me, the conclusion is that because of Culpeper County's tangible personal property tax rate as compared to other communities being higher than some of those other communities, it puts us at a higher risk than other communities for getting a data center that is tax exempt. So with all of this coming to mind, I started to get concerned. And even though the data center has continuously been assuring us that who they're working with is taxable, and that who they work with is tangible on all their other projects, I think that's fine, but I think there's always that chance. So I wanted to look and see what could I do to guard against that, even if it's a 1% chance. How could I try to guard against that? So with that, I came up with an idea of minimum revenue. Now, which originally I tried to put it in the electric service premise agreement. Legal encouraged that to be moved to a different agreement, and also it's really not an issue for Dominion. It's an issue between us and the owner of the property. So what it doesn't do, it doesn't alter taxes received or retained by the town in any way. The taxes that we receive and retain are not affected by this agreement at all. What it does do, it sets a tangible personal property minimum payment of $1.5 million per year. The minimum payment is then increased over time on an annual basis based on a cost escalator. Even if the cost escalator goes down, it won't go down. It can only go up with that cost escalator.
Chris, if it's not a tax, what do you call it? Is it a user fee?
It's not a tax. It's just an extra payment or fee that they're agreeing to. So if the tangible personal property tax received and retained by the town is less than that minimum payment. If they have one building, the minimum payment would be $1.5 million. If they had two buildings, it would be $3 million. If they had 10 buildings, it would be $15 million. And if the tangible personal property tax received is less than that amount, then they cut us a check for the additional amount. So it's just an agreed upon additional payment. And we've structured the agreement that we're getting that, we're allowing Dominion to serve in our territory, and that's what they're getting. That's what they get. Any contract, if we get something in the contract, the other side, for it to be legal, has to get something. So that's what they're getting per the contract. So how was the minimum payment determined? This was one of the questions that came up. Originally, the concept I had was to tie directly to tangible personal property calculation, to look at that personal property that was in the buildings that may be taxable, and to run the calculation, and whatever that difference is, have them pay the difference. That's very problematic. It's complicated, difficult. If you could envision a 3-letter entity in one of those buildings that has personal property, they're not going to tell the town what personal property they have in that building. They're just not going to do it. So that was a problem. But that's where I started. What that morphed into was a per building minimum payment concept. which was agreed upon by both bodies, and quite frankly, I think in some ways is more beneficial than the other way of calculating it. The way we determined the $1.5 million per building is we looked at the independent study that we had done in 2024 with Mangum Economics. They're a leader in doing these type of studies, and based on their calculation in that study, it was for Culpeper Technology Campus. It was for 7 buildings. I took pretty much the higher of the numbers and ran the math, and it came to $1.31 million per building per year, again for tangible personal property. Real estate was not considered an issue because the owner of these buildings that will be leasing the space is a taxable entity, so the buildings will be taxable. But just for information, based on the numbers that were in the Mangum Economics report, that's $200,000 per building per year for those. We rounded the 1.3 million up to $1.5 million, and that's what we put in the minimal agreement and what we asked for. So you could, if you wanted, you could add the 1.3 and the 0.2 together and you get the 1.5, but that really doesn't make sense because we anticipate getting the real estate even if there is tax exempt entities in the buildings. So why was the producer price index for electric distribution used? That was a question Sarah asked me. Quite frankly, initially when we first made this request to add this to the agreement, we wrote the language into the electric service premise agreement, which is an electric agreement, and that is the index that our attorney chose and rolled into that agreement. When it was moved into a separate minimum agreement, we didn't change it, didn't see a need to change it. I think this index is very stable. It's been around for a long time. It's growing. All indications is that it will continue to grow, and we considered it favorable to the town versus going with some of the, as Sarah asked about the cloud computing, should we use that? It doesn't have as much history, and we think it's not as stable, and again, this is what we stuck with. We thought it was favorable to the town. Key thing is we just wanted some sort of an escalator in there, so over the period that there was an escalator in that amount associated with the minimum. So why the duration of 15 years? This corresponds to the anticipated lease that the owner will be doing with their end user. And this was a concession that they requested in this agreement. And I need to make it clear, this request was a request by the town. It's voluntary on the part of the owner. The town, as I said at the beginning, the town is required to provide service to this territory regardless. We cannot hold a property owner hostage to provide power to get something else from them. So, this was a negotiation with me not having all the cards, and actually I didn't have hardly any cards. This was a request, and they agreed to the request. So why now? That's another question that's been asked. Again, Dominion provided this electric service premise agreement to the town in February of 2025. It was nearing completion, anticipated to be executed by the town, by me, in August of 2025. It was a pretty standard agreement at that point in time that we would do with, in providing service. A little bit different in that we were contracting with Dominion to provide the service than us providing it ourselves. But that's when, kind of last minute, I came up with the concern and the thought of adding a minimum revenue language, to try to address those remaining concerns that I had. The owner agreed. The owner did not have a problem with adding the minimal revenue language, but they were very concerned about the implications of adding that language and what that would do on the timing. Because at that time, they were anticipating that the agreement would be signed. Dominion was waiting on the agreement to be signed, and they agreed to include the information, this language, with the caveat that I would do everything I could to expedite getting the electric service premise agreement to Dominion and get it executed. Dominion and the owner have third-party commitments and deadlines in place. They've had commitments. This owner, I know, has paid millions of dollars to Dominion to pre-order equipment, years ago. So they have a lot riding on this. So it is very important to them, to both the owner and as well to Dominion, to get this resolved on whether we're going to provide the power directly or whether Dominion is going to do it. The difference between the electric service premise agreement and the minimum revenue agreement is I do not have authority to execute the minimum revenue agreement on my own. So that required council approval. That added another layer of concern for the owner and their decision to agree to this language. And the minimum revenue agreement and electric service agreement, as soon as they were finalized and ready, I reached out to the mayor. I explained the reason why I needed to seek council's approval because of the new agreement that was in there, and I also expressed that the caveat that they had and what that I had agreed to, that I would try to push this along, and that's why it came to y'all, and the mayor agreed to call this special meeting. Didn't mean to create any controversy over this. I saw an opportunity to, quite frankly, get a what I would call an insurance policy that we wouldn't otherwise had. So I went for it. So that's what brings us here today. So the financial impact, if the end users are tax exempt, and that's a big if, and it results in $1.5 million per building per year of minimum payment, which otherwise we would get no payment for tangible personal property tax. Now on the other end, if the end users are taxable, it may or may not result in an additional payment to the town. If the taxes are higher than what this minimum calculation is, it has no impact at all. If the calculation is less, for example, if they have a building there and they put, say the first building, they have minimal tenants in that building, the taxes received could be less than that minimum payment, and they could, that could trigger that minimum payment and they would pay us more. Currently, there's, as far as proffers, there's 13 buildings planned between the two sites. I don't know if all of those buildings will be built, but based on the current rate, today's rate of the 1.5 million per building, That's $19.5 million of guaranteed revenue. Over a 15-year period at the current rate, that could be upwards of $300 million, depending on how fast they build those buildings initially. The 15-year clock starts when the certificate of occupancy is issued for the first building. So most likely that $1.5 million will be more than that because of the escalators that will occur between now and when that happen. If you roll in the escalators, based on my quick look, it would probably mean between $400 and $500 million over that 15-year period as a guarantee. Again, this agreement may mean nothing. If they fill up the buildings with all taxable entities, they'll be paying us probably in excess of that amount. So the recommendation is that council approve the electric service premise agreement and minimum revenue agreement with changes as may be approved by the town manager and town attorney to finalize the agreement with the parties and authorize the mayor and town attorney to execute the agreements. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is the county involved in this in any way? I know at one time we had to negotiate with them on, the taxes, but the $1.5 million per building is coming directly to the town with no involvement from the county.
That is to the town. The town and the county do have a revenue sharing agreement in place between the town and the county that was put in several years ago to put the town's technology zone on an even playing field with the technology zone outside of the town limits. There is that agreement between us and the town, but this does not have any bearing on the town. Where it could have an impact is, for example, the taxes that we receive for tangible personal property is based on a percentage of what the county receives. If the county were to decide to cut their tangible personal property in half, let's say, we would get half of what we would get in tangible personal property. If that would drop it below this minimum, then that would be another reason that would kick in that minimum and push us back up to where we currently are. So in addition to a kind of a insurance policy, it also is a stabilizer for us from a revenue projection standpoint, if that makes sense.
Jamie?
First, thank you for the thorough and comprehensive presentation this morning. What I'm hearing you say is that, well, I know we have to supply the electricity regardless, with or without the agreement, that this agreement, you came to the conclusion that we need this agreement as a protection and solely as a protection and insurance agreement for the town, and that it's voluntary for the owners, and the fact that they are willing to sign it and wanting to sign it. I think what I'm hearing you say too is the quicker we can get it in front of them and they can sign it, then that's protection for the town. I really want to say thank you for forward thinking enough, like you always do, to protect the town, and apologize if anyone has made it seem like you were doing anything other than that. And I just really appreciate you looking out for the town like this, in this way. Completely voluntary on their part, the fact that they're willing to sign so that we know that we're going to be protected for at least the next 15 years, to get, to have at least a financial income that we can then use to create, the amenities in Culpeper, keep our taxes low, have amenities in the town. And I just appreciate that.
Absolutely. Travis?
So I read through it. Are there any clauses that address the termination of that 15-year and kind of what it looks like at that point moving forward?
No, it's the agreement is silent. Okay. With that, it doesn't mean we Doesn't say we could try to renegotiate something or couldn't. But with it pretty much being voluntary on their part, I didn't feel that it was I didn't feel comfortable pushing it. Quite frankly, I felt whenever I brought this up, I felt that I was somewhat negotiating against myself, if that makes any sense. If I push too hard, the response that I could always get back is, fine, you provide me the power. And, that isn't what I want to do, because if we provide the power, yes, we could probably make some money off of that. But as you know, it wouldn't be contiguous to our current electric utility system. It's 230 kV versus 115 kV, so apples and oranges don't mix, so they wouldn't be connected. We're required to, we're not a for-profit entity. Our rates serve our customers, and they're supposed to be fair to all of our customers. So the rate would, any rate evaluation would be based on, quite frankly, pretty minimal assets owned by the town, essentially a meter and some wires between Dominion and them. So there's really very minimal justification to make bank out of that. So I didn't want to risk that. So I felt pretty lucky in what I got, quite frankly.
Anybody else? John?
Questions for you. I appreciate you talking about the formula, the escalator. Do you have that formula, like what you're using for the escalation?
The escalator?
Yeah.
The escalator, I mean, you could, it's not a...
I mean, is it in the contract?
It's not a formula for the escalator. The escalator is tied to the producer price index for electric power distribution. So that's a published index,
Okay.
kind of like the consumer price index
just
is
not the
published.
consumer price index, right.
In the agreement, it also says if at any given year, this price index isn't reported, say they decide that they're going to switch and use a different index, it gives the town the authority to pick the index to be used. Now, obviously, we can't pick an index that would be just ridiculous and wouldn't manage, but it does leave that to us to pick. So we'll always have an index versus it's not left up to negotiation between us and them. It's left up to us to pick that index that works.
So I'd like to go back to the genesis of this meeting. So you were working on this. We had a deadline that passed in February. Is that correct, what I saw earlier? And then when
No,
it passed in
it wasn't a
August.
deadline. February was the first time that was when Dominion gave the first draft of the agreement to the town and Stack to work on. We've been working on it from then to August. It was nearing a point to where it was ready for execution, and that's where I kind of blew it up by quite frankly making a last-minute request. But
Change up.
I felt I had an opportunity, and I took it to do so.
So would we say that Stack asked you to schedule this special meeting instead of doing it 2 weeks later?
Stack did not ask me to create a special meeting. Stack asked me whenever, back in August, whenever I brought this up, and we had to write a whole new agreement, so it wasn't going to be done overnight. They asked me to do whatever I could to expedite it, which is what I did. And to me, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Now, sometimes it makes sense to use vinegar. I think there's other things that behind the scenes I'm still trying to request. I mean, obviously they have proffers that they've agreed to, but we're still trying to improve things where we can. So, you know,
But
I
you
told them I
understand
would
the
try to
optics
push it
of it,
forward,
right?
so now I'm trying to meet
Right.
that.
The
So
optics
that's
of
why I
it,
asked.
the optics of it, which is, you know, this is something that could have waited 2 more weeks. There wasn't a real rush on it. It could have gone through the regular normal cycle. And, you know, this is a very contentious issue in our community.
Well, it's that way because you made it that way. I mean, if you think about it,
Get
if we
control of
waited.
your meeting, please.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'll get you in a minute, Jamie, okay?
You know, this is a very contentious issue in our community. And for us to rush something like this through and until very last minute being able to have public comment, the optics were bad. I'm not saying that what you did and what you've created necessarily is a bad thing. I think it actually has some real good value to it. I would question the 1.5. I would say probably more like 3 would be the number I would go for. But we weren't in on the original negotiations for this that you've had with STAC. So that we're all just seeing this now and then asking to pass it instead of, you know, what are the comparables with other jurisdictions? What are, you know, the other ways that we could be looking at this as far as, you know, minimum revenue generation? So it's just, I don't like being rushed. And that's what this kind of feels like.
You ask about the comparables. There aren't any comparables that I'm aware of. When I asked for this, I first asked our attorney. He wasn't familiar with anything being tied to a electric service premise agreement such as this. He talked throughout his company. Nobody was aware of it. STAC this was new to them as well. So, you know, so there really aren't any comparables. I mean, there may be comparables back during when you're seeking proffers and things of that nature, but I'm not familiar with these. I'm not saying they're not out there.
Right. We can look at tax revenue that's being generated, right, and other jurisdictions, and we can give
Well, and
guidance on what we should be getting. Right?
We did look at that through through that study that we had done in 2024 that looked at, you know, what is normally done, you know, out there, but you have to realize the taxes we receive is based solely on the taxes that are in place in the community that we're in. Mm-hmm. And we not only have the town tax rates, we have the revenue sharing agreement. The county also made changes to their incentive programs that then have an impact on you know, the percentage we get back from the town. And when when all of those things are weighed in, that's where it came up to that, you know, that 1.3 million per building, which is why you know, we went with the 1.5, which was, you know, slightly higher than that. Again, my concern was if I asked for something too much, I would get a no. And we wouldn't be here today. You know, it wouldn't have, I apologize, it wouldn't have created that controversy because it's, you know, the electric service premise agreement would have been executed and we would have moved forward because that would have been our obligation. But we would have had a lost opportunity that I was trying to secure. And, you know, I mean, the timing is horrible. You know, I would have loved for it to have been done months ago. Dominion, you know, the end user would have loved it for it to have been done, you know, years ago. There was a lot of things that took it as long as it took when we, and 2 years ago when this was initiated, the owner of Copper Ridge was the owner that developed Laurel Park. They were a land developer that decided they wanted to get in the data center business. Quite frankly, that had me extremely concerned because I think there's a lot of risk with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, building a building a data center complex. So when Stack, who is the owner of Culpeper Technology Campus, purchased and acquired Copper Ridge, I see that as a good thing, and I think it potentially some opportunity maybe for some improvements there. None that we can force. There's proffers associated with it, but that doesn't mean we can't ask. But all of that was part of what took time, in developing these agreements, and whatnot, and it just happened to lead us to where we are today.
Can you talk about the legality of what we're doing here as far as the permission we have through state law to be able to do this, and talk about the precedent that sets, to have these kinds of special arrangements for them and not for other businesses in our community?
I'm not an attorney, so I can't talk about the legality associated with it. I can say that was part of what took almost a month and a half or so to develop this, was discussions between our attorney and Stack's attorney to make sure this agreement, the minimum revenue agreement, is is as legally enforceable as possible. All parties feel that it is legally enforceable. If you notice, it's also, there's language in the electric service premise agreement that states if the minimum revenue agreement is found to not be enforceable, that it's enforceable through the electric service premise agreement. So we've tried to protect the town in these agreements in every way possible. That's not to say that, as in any agreement, some judge somewhere could decide that some portion or all of which is not enforceable.
Believe me, I love innovation. I love that you're thinking out of the box on this, but I'm just concerned if we are on steady, are we on steady ground in regards to the state legislature and their laws that they have in place, and are we following that under Dylan's rule? Or are we kind of making our own way, and then are we going to set ourselves up for
I don't
lawsuit?
think this is covered on this. I think this is a contract, and it's associated with us giving up or giving use of an asset that we have to another entity, and and that's what gives the legal.
I'm talking about the minimum payment aspect.
I know, but it ties together. That's what that
That's how you're
is.
tying it.
That's how it's tied together. Again, I am not the attorney, but the attorneys have approved these agreements as to form on both sides, and feel that it is. If the worst case, if the minimum revenue agreement is found that it's not, then we're back to where we would be otherwise, which is an electric service premise agreement and providing power.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
I move the recommendation.
Wait a minute,
Second.
Jamie had
Well, wait, we have discussion.
You finished?
Well, I was going to also say part of the comparison is other counties or localities that did not have the forethought or innovation to do an execution like this or an agreement like this, and therefore, like you said in the presentation, ended up not having the revenue that they had anticipated. So that's also a comparison, which I appreciate. I also just, again, appreciate the fact that I trust you and assume positive intent. I don't think that, and the fact that you walked us through everything today clears up a lot of questions, and that just apologize for the misconceptions put out that you would do anything other than protecting the town and do anything for ulterior motives or shadiness. But I just really appreciate the idea of coming into this with the whole purpose of you saw a concern that left the town vulnerable and that you wanted to strengthen the town's stance and protect the town from, possibly losing revenue. And so this was what you identified as a way to solution for that, which is innovative. Not another county is doing it or another locality is doing it. It looks like it's going to protect us. And if the main concern is just having the special meeting to go around that, it seems like you've also clarified how we got there and have taken ownership for how it could be perceived, even though that's not at all what it is, right? So, and I also get the fact of having to balance the negotiations. Like if you're to say, sign this for us, you absolutely don't have to sign it because we want to protect ourselves, but you're going to have to wait, another 3 weeks that they could at any point say, I don't want to sign that. Never mind, we're not waiting. Let's just go through with the electric agreement and be done with it. And then, like you've said, we've lost the opportunity. So I understand the optics of what it could be perceived as. I also understand what it has been spun as what it is not. And I also understand that there's certain balancing that you have to do at the end of the day to really just protect the town. And I just appreciate you for putting in all the hard work and even thinking about that and even bringing it to us in the way that you have. So thank you.
My motion still stands.
I had a second. That was discussion.
All right.
I make an amendment to the motion to improve the minimum to $3 million per building.
Do I have a second? No second? It's dead. No second? All right, let's get together. Motion to approve the recommendation.
They already have the motion.
Huh?
Ready for a roll call?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Aye.
Councilmember Dyke,
Hi.
Councilmember Ollinger,
Aye.
Mayor Reeves,
Aye.
Councilmember Dominguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Russell,
Aye.
Councilmember Schmidt,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Yao.
Aye.
The motion carries.
All right. Anything else? If not, we are adjourned.